Hello everyone! For the second half of patch Luna 7, Lohen will be the second 5-star character releasing on the patch. The big surprise to a lot of people who are following his beta was that he isn't a standard character, which was initially rumored, but actually a limited 5-star character. And while this definitely changes his overall value as a 5-star pool, since being a standard or limited character are very different, Lohen nevertheless can be an effective DPS in the right scenarios, given you have the right team for him. So in this guide, I'll be covering how Lohen's kit works, the best ways to build him, his potential best teams, and analyzing his place in the meta in terms of overall strength and pull value, along with citing various pre-release calcs on Lohen from different theorycrafters. Lohen is a 5-star cryo polearm on-field DPS who ascends with crit damage. He is a Hexerai character once you complete his witch's homework quest, so he will gain important bonuses when there are a total of at least 2 Hexerai characters on the team. The majority of his kit revolves around his elemental skill. Using it makes Lohen enters an enhanced state called Master Stroke mode for 13 seconds. During this enhanced state, Lohen gains interruption resistance, cryo infused and empowered attacks, and access to 2 different resource bars. The first resource is called Joy. Lohen generates Joy up to a max of 100 when he hits enemies with his normal and charge attacks. Once he fills up his Joy bar to 100 points, he can consume all Joy to use his special elemental skill called Etched into Bone and Soul to deal additional damage. He can only use his enhanced skill up to 3 times after he enters Master Stroke mode. Afterwards, he will no longer generate Joy. The second resource is called Will to Win. Lohen gains Will to Win up to a max of 100 when his teammates deal damage to enemies while Lohen is on field and is in Master Stroke mode. When Lohen uses his special elemental skill, he consumes all Will to Win to increase the damage of it, scaling with how much Will to Win was consumed. And with at least 2 Hexerai characters on the team, if at least 50 Will to Win was consumed, Lohen will gain 40% damage to his normal and charge attacks for 6 seconds. Lohen's Will to Win generation is based on how much damage his teammates do. If they deal damage greater than 1000% of Lohen's base attack, he'll get 20 Will to Win. With Lohen's A1 passive, if the damage is greater than 4000% of Lohen's base attack, he'll get 80 Will to Win. If the teammate damage doesn't reach these thresholds, Lohen will only get 1 Will to Win. Thus, Lohen synergizes well with sub DPSs like Durin or Emily who actually deal decent damage from off field, as they are able to generate more Will to Win so that Lohen's special elemental skill can deal more damage. Lohen's elemental burst simply deals cryo damage, and it also consumes all Will to Win, increasing the burst damage based on the amount of Will to Win consumed. If used during Master Stroke mode, it will also increase his enhanced state duration to counteract the burst animation time. The burst effectively acts as another special elemental skill for Lohen, allowing for extra damage whenever it's available. As for his remaining passives, when Lohen is on field and in Master Stroke mode, with his A4, when a teammate triggers any cryo related reactions, that character and Lohen will get 15% attack for 8 seconds, and he has a special passive that increases his skill talent level by 1 for 9 seconds after he uses his elemental skill to enter Master Stroke mode. If any party member has a talent level greater than or equal to the level of Lohen's skill, then Lohen will get the +1 skill level for an additional 6 seconds. This requirement should only look at the talent's base level, meaning if Lohen's skill is crowned, you just need another party member that also has a crowned talent. That's everything on Lohen's base kit. In terms of how to play Lohen, with our current understanding, along with using his special elemental skills and bursts, the best combos for him are doing as many N1Cs as you can, which is 1 normal attack into a charged attack, as his charge attacks while in Master Stroke mode consume less stamina. So the simplified version of Lohen's gameplay is spam N1Cs. Then use his special elemental skill when it's available with enough Joy, and when the damage is maximized with enough Will to Win. And of course adding his burst when available, generally bursting every other rotation. For more specific examples, here are a couple of full Lohen combos that theorycrafters have been using in their calcs. They are pretty similar to each other as the total amount of N1Cs are the same, but some of them are just moved around in order. Now based on early access content creator footage, Lohen's attacks do have cancels, meaning his combos can be performed faster, which can potentially enable 2 extra N1Cs in the combo for a total of 14 instead of the baseline 12, resulting in more damage. There's also 16 N1C which just ignores Lohen's special skills, which I've seen used in freeze teams mainly, but with his signature or C1, you are better off fitting in Lohen's special elemental skills. Lastly, with Lohen C6, you are able to use 2 more enhanced skills every rotation, slightly altering his combo. But as always, all of these combos are subject to change with post-release testing to see if everything works in practice. For talent leveling priority, it's simply skill then burst, as his skill is the majority of his kit. Now, let's go over Lohen's best build options. For weapons, his signature, Disaster and Remorse, is his best in slot. Crit rate substat, and its passive gives 40% damage to his normal attacks, charge attacks, elemental skill, and elemental burst, which is increased to 70% with at least 2 Hexerai characters on the team. The buffs have low starting durations, but the normal and charge attack damage buff are extended when his skill or burst hits enemies, and vice versa. Basically, as long as you play Lohen with N1Cs and his special skills as I've outlined already, you'll maintain the passive. For other 5-star weapon alternatives, anything that gives attack, crit, crit and or damage percent are good. Jade Spear is the main one, which is more obtainable since it's a standard 5-star weapon, but other 5-star statistics are also usable. For 4-star weapons, Deathmatch from the Battle Pass is generally his best option because of the crit and attack. Sacrificer's Staff is good if you pulled for it on the weapon banner. Missive Wind Spear can work mainly in reverse melt teams. It can also work in freeze teams if Lohen starts with a Hydro Aura, or in forward melt teams without Sitlali, so that he himself can trigger a reaction to activate the weapon's passive, but generally, uptime on it can be inconsistent in teams other than reverse melt. Other than that, the 3-star weapon White Tassel is the baseline free-to-play option. Here are some weapon calcs done by Beefpotato in Lohen's 3 main teams: forward melt, reverse melt, and freeze. Since all 3 team archetypes function a little bit differently, there are some slight differences, so feel free to pause if you're interested in the details. For artifacts, Lohen is a Hextrai main DPS, so his best set will be the Hextrai DPS set, 4-piece wins, pretty self-explanatory. For main stats, he is a normal attack scaling DPS, so he simply wants Attack Hourglass, Cryo Damage Goblet, and Crit Circlet. For substats, he mainly just wants crit and attack. EM can be useful if Lohen is in a reverse melt team where he himself triggers melts. Next, let's go over Lohen's Constellations. C1 allows him to gain and hold more will to win, which makes his special elemental skill and burst deal more damage. With C2, after Lohen uses his special elemental skill or burst, his next normal or charge attack in his enhanced state will deal extra damage and will give the team 200 EM for 8 seconds. C3 grants his skill 3 additional talent levels. With C4, Lohen will gain the maximum amount of will to win when he uses his burst, enabling it to deal max damage on cast. C4 also grants Lohen 15 energy if he enters his enhanced state without his burst, and if his burst is up, using his burst will refund 15 energy. C5 grants his burst 3 additional talent levels, and lastly, C6 gives an additional 175% crit damage to Lohen's special elemental skills and his burst. In addition, Lohen can use 5 special skills instead of 3 every rotation, and when he uses his special skill or burst, it won't consume any will to win, but will instead max his joy gauge, and the next special elemental skill he uses will extend the duration of Master Stroke mode. This can happen once every 7 seconds. Overall, Lohen's Constellations aren't the greatest in terms of damage increase. For example, they primarily focus on increasing his personal damage, but in his main team where he's driving melts for Durin, Durin is the one dealing the majority of the team's damage. Consequently, his signature is generally better than the C1 and can be better than his C1 and C2 combined, especially if you're starting at a lower baseline weapon like White Tassel. Because of his overall weaker Constellations, in many cases, early vertical investment into his supports will be better for damage. For instance, any Lohen forward melt team, while Lohen's signature is generally better than Nicole's and Durin's signatures, you'd rather have both Nicole's and Durin's C1s and especially C2s rather than Lohen's. The same idea applies to Lohen burning reverse melt teams, where Durin's and Nicole's C2s provide more damage than Lohen's early Constellations. And even in a freeze team, Escafi's early vertical investment looks like a better pull value in terms of damage increase compared to Lohen's early vertical investment. Finally, let's go over Lohen's best team comps. In this section, I will reference team DPS comps done by 3 theorycrafters: Beefpotato, also known as ForeverNya on Reddit, Bluchu, and Jaxon. Remember that different theorycrafters will reach slightly different results because of differing assumptions, including gearing, rotation time, buff up time, etc. So please don't directly compare results of different theorycrafters or use the results to cheat PvP. The actual DPS number is never really that important, and Calcs will always never 100% accurately reflect actual gameplay. Keep all of this in mind to ensure you consume TC healthily and responsibly. Lohen is a unique cryo main DPS because his attacks while in his enhanced state have a special ICD, allowing him to apply a ton of cryo while on field. As a result, the main teams where Lohen shines is in teams that can abuse Lohen's high cryo application. Lohen's main team archetype is where he plays as the cryo driver to allow an off-field pyro character to melt their attacks. The main pyro character that fits this role is Dark Mode Durin. Along with Durin, Nicole is a very strong support for the team because her attack buff also applies to off-fielders, so she's able to buff Durin, who's dealing most of the damage, while Lohen is on-field driving the reactions. For the final slot, there are a lot of options. The best looking option is Sitlali because she is a very strong buffer for the team. She enables cryo resonance, grants pyro res shred, and holds 4-piece scroll. If you don't have Sitlali, you can use Lohen, who fulfills a somewhat similar role with res shred and 4-piece scroll, but there are also other support options including Albedo with his Hextrai buff and anima supports for 4-piece Viridescent Venerer like Prune and Sucrose. For Nicole alternatives, you can use any of the supports mentioned as Sitlali alternatives or Bennett, and if you don't have Durin, you can use Mawika or Xiangling. However, both Nicole and Durin are pretty integral to the team, so you will notice a damage difference without Nicole and Durin. Instead of Lohen applying cryo so that he can enable melts for an off-field pyro character like Durin, Lohen himself can be played as the main damage dealer, where the team applies enough pyro so that Lohen can be the main character triggering the melt reactions. The main way to have enough pyro for Lohen is to incorporate burning for a proper reverse melt team for Lohen. Both Durin, this time using light mode, and Nicole are the best pyro duo for Lohen again. And for the Dendro support, Emily is one of the best options because she is another off-field sub DPS that can take advantage of Nicole's attack buff and help generate more will to win for Lohen. If you don't have Emily, Nahida can be a suitable alternative for her. And the same Nicole and Durin alternatives for Lohen's forward melt teams also apply for Lohen's reverse melt teams. Lastly, Lohen can still be played in a freeze team as a Skirk alternative even if his unique on-field cryo application isn't that important for these teams. The primary freeze team he can play in is with ForeverNya, Escoffier, and Mona as the second Hexdrive character of the team to enable Lohen and Mona's Hexdrive bonuses and the 4-piece Hexdrive support set. Lohen won't be better than an optimized Skirk as a freeze-oriented DPS, but he still functions fine. For support alternatives, you can use Sitlali, Shilonen, or Nicole in place of ForeverNya, Escoffier, or Mona. A very detailed table made by Beefpotato is shown here with Calcs using those alternatives. To conclude this Lohen guide, here is my analysis on his place in the meta in terms of overall strength and pull value. Based on the numbers he's outputting in Calcs by theorycrafters, with his optimal teammates, Lohen looks pretty strong. He fulfills a similar role to Wriothesley in forward melt, reverse melt, and freeze teams, and Lohen can be considered a better version of him in these roles damage-wise. With Durin and Nicole, he is a strong driver for dark mode Durin in forward melt teams, and if you add a Dendro offfielder like Emily, Lohen also works well as a primary DPS in reverse melt teams. And even in freeze teams, which isn't Lohen's main purpose, he works fine. On paper, he isn't that far behind Skirk in terms of damage, especially if you can't do optimized Skirk combos, but Skirk is much more flexible with her burst playstyle and larger AoE in her attacks, and she scales better with vertical investment. However, if you weren't interested in playing Skirk in the first place, Lohen freeze teams are a nice secondary team option to play to his primary melt teams. If Lohen was actually a standard character like the initial beta rumors suggested, I would be very positive on him as a 5-star character since he would basically be available for everyone. Now as a limited 5-star character, I think he's still a strong DPS and will perform well for the people who like Lohen, want to pull him, and plan to play him in his best teams. However, there are a couple of key issues he has that decreases his overall value from a strict meta perspective. First, Lohen's best teams are pretty reliant on both Nicole and Durin for optimal damage performance. Yes, there are alternatives you can use for both, but they will result in a fairly significant damage loss. In addition, both Nicole and Durin are quite valuable supports for many other DPSs, so Lohen ideally needing both of them can be quite expensive and restrictive if you play other characters who also want to use Nicole and Durin. And for forward melt teams, Sitlali is also another strong support he ideally wants that other DPSs like Mawika would also like to use. Second, kind of extending on the first point, Lohen's best teams, such as forward melt, are effectively an extension of DPS Durin teams. Carry Durin has always looked good in a calc, but in my opinion, they don't work as well in practice. Also, with dark mode Durin being relatively single target oriented, and Lohen also looking similar, he may encounter some quality of life issues in general gameplay. And third, ForeverNya is releasing very soon, introducing a new archetype, Stellar Reactions. And while Lohen is likely able to play in the new Stellar teams with the new Stellar supports, at the current moment, Lohen doesn't directly synergize with the Stellar stuff in any way, such as the Stellar Conduct reaction that is being introduced in Sandroni's patch. Since Stellar reactions do revolve around the cryo element, there is a chance that he may work with newer Stellar reactions and get new additions to his kit, like how Wriothesley is getting buffs to make his kit work specifically in Stellar Conduct teams. However, I am not too confident this will happen, as he has a pretty clear and defined role as a melt driver for Durin, which is something he's very good at. So his current banner placement is a bit of an unfortunate one, as from a meta perspective, it is much safer to recommend people to save their wishes for the new characters releasing with ForeverNya. But while he might not be the most recommendable unit to pull from a pure meta perspective, for those that do like Lohen and want to play him in his optimal teams, he can be an effective cryo carry. That's everything I wanted to cover about Lohen. As always, big thanks to Beefpotato, also known as ForeverNya on Reddit, Bluchu, and Jaxon, the 3 theory crafters who gave me permission to cite their Lohen calcs in this video. They put in a lot of hard work and I appreciate the help they gave me in the creation of this guide. I hope this guide and analysis was helpful to you all and giving you a better understanding of everything related to Lohen. Just clicking and watching the video helps the channel out immensely, and if you want to show even more support, consider liking or sharing the video or click the subscribe button for more Genshin guide and analysis videos in the future. Leave any questions in the comments, and for all of you planning on wishing, I wish you all the best of luck on your Lohen pulls.